Time now to dive into some new numbers from the U.S. Census Bureau. Joining me for analysis is economist Mervin Jebaraj, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. Welcome back, Mervin. New population numbers out through July 2018 is what we're looking at. Northwest Arkansas growth up 2%, which is slower than what we've seen in previous years. So instead of that 12,000 people a year moving into the region, it's just like 10,700. This is still good, but is the slowdown a good thing?
Well, it certainly is a problem for the marketers for this region. It was a whole lot nicer to say 1,000 people a month than it is to say 891 people a month. So from that respect, maybe not so great. But when you think about some of the issues that we've had here in Northwest Arkansas around housing and the cost of affordable housing as a result of the population increase, maybe this will alleviate some of that, but really I think the underlying problem is still not solved in that respect, where there isn't sufficient land available with infrastructure to build homes on. So I still think that it would be nice to have the kind of population growth that we've been used to, 12,000 or so people on an annual basis. A lot of that is dependent on employment, of course. Back in that time when we were having 12,000 people a year, our employment grew about 4%, 3.5%. Last year, the employment grew only about 2.2%. So it stands to reason that the population growth slowed down as well, because about 64% of the population growth comes from people moving into this region. And I still think of Northwest Arkansas as a place that people come to largely because they get a job here. And it's not exactly a region, or it's not yet a region where people just move to and then find a job. People usually come here with some offer of employment. So the employment growth slowdown in Northwest Arkansas, is accounted for in this population growth that we've seen, slower population growth. And I'll probably say that given that the employment growth has slowed, all of last year is rather slow this year as well. We'll probably see the population growth decline some more in the next reading that we get next year.
Or at least slower growth. Some other major metro areas of the state saw some growth. Jonesboro up 1%, Central Arkansas 0.4% growth, Fort Smith just 0.1%. Give me some context or some rankings for how you see these three areas faring.
Well, I think these tie very neatly with what's going on in the employment sector as well. So Jonesboro is the second fastest growing employment area in Arkansas, and so you see the second fastest population growth in the state coming from the Jonesboro metro area. And so their population growth has slowed down just a little bit as well, given that their employment growth has slowed down. Central Arkansas, same story. Their population growth follows a little bit of their employment growth as well. So their employment growth slows, their population growth slows as well. But Jonesboro, for example, 68% of the people, of the population growth in Jonesboro comes from people moving in. Whereas in Central Arkansas, that's about 20%. And so within Central Arkansas, I think there are some interesting statistics that we see in terms of people moving in, at least in the latest reading of, where people are moving within Central Arkansas. It looks like Pulaski County has managed to stem the loss of people moving to every county surrounding them right now. They're only losing people to Saline County and White County, where Searcy is. Previously, they were losing people to Faulkner and Lone Oak and Grant and Jefferson County as well. So they're gaining people from those counties, but losing them still to Saline and White County. Fort Smith, on the other hand, I think they would not have had the 0.1% population growth had it not been for the birth rate. They lost people in terms of migration, but their birth rate is what caused the population increase that we've seen. And again, within the Fort Smith metro area, Crawford County, which is just south of Northwest Arkansas, south of Washington County, saw the fastest growth rate within Fort Smith metro area, and it looks like a lot of that growth is coming from the counties in Oklahoma that make up the Fort Smith metro. So LaFleur County, for example, is sending people to Crawford, and it looks like a lot of those people might be working in Northwest Arkansas, because Northwest Arkansas's employment draws people from Crawford County.
What about the areas of the state that are not in these four metro regions? What are we seeing as kind of a general rule?
I think you'd have to say that generally outside of these metro areas, we're not seeing a whole lot of population growth. I think one statistic that's pretty stark is that since the 2010 population census, 87 or so % of the population growth in Arkansas comes from Benton and Washington counties. That's a pretty stark number. So within the 75 states in the county, about only a third added any population at all. Only 5 or 6 added anywhere above 5% population, and those are the ones that we just talked about in Northwest Arkansas and Northeast Arkansas and some in Central Arkansas. So almost the entire eastern side or eastern third of the state, with the exception of Craighead and Greene counties, are losing population, and almost the entire southern third of the state, with the exception of Miller and Sevier counties, are losing population as well. So by and large, if you're looking at the state as a whole, it's almost a sea of red in terms of population loss.
With all this population shift, how is Arkansas comparing to its surrounding states? Is Arkansas in a region of the U.S. that's experiencing some similar growth? Are we bucking a trend? Is it something else? You mentioned earlier that where the jobs grow, the population grows. So where does Arkansas sit regionally?
Yeah, I would say that if you compared us to the South as a region, according to the census definition anyway, we're growing by less than half of what the South as a whole has grown since 2010. And so that is not particularly great. But if you look at the 6-state region just around us, we're somewhere in the middle of the pack. So Texas is in a league of its own with its fast growth pace there in terms of population growth. Tennessee and Oklahoma are in the next level below that. We're in the league with Missouri and Louisiana in terms of moderate levels of population growth. And then after all of us is Mississippi, where population has essentially declined in the last year. So we're somewhere in the middle. But compared to most of these other regions, we still lack a large city within Arkansas, and so it is really important to see our urban areas, Northwest Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas, and Central Arkansas, grow rapidly. I mean, when you think about Oklahoma, for example, even the smaller city there, Tulsa, has more than double the population of the city of Little Rock. So we really do need large urban areas in this state, and those large urban areas tend to draw in a lot more economic activity, and so that's important to see growth rate in these 3 regions of the state to really push the state forward.
One more question. Arkansas's metropolitan statistical areas, they're called MSAs, are these county boundaries that define population growth by region. What have we seen? Is it time to rethink some of those MSAs? I'll give you as an example, Greene County is not factored into the Jonesboro MSA, yet there's a lot of growth in Greene County. Who decides these MSAs? Should they be looked at a little bit differently?
Well, the MSA definitions are set out by the Office of Management and Budget, which is an office directly under the President's control, and they set out the definitions for the MSAs. So if you want to tweet at the President to try to modify MSA definitions, that would be a start. But generally, MSAs start with one urban area that has about 50,000 or so in population, and then adds on adjacent areas that have sort of a commuting economic and social relationship. And that piece is particularly important because it does change MSA definitions over time. So for example, in Northwest Arkansas, the latest MSA definitions put out by the OMB dropped McDonald County in Missouri from Northwest Arkansas because less than 25% of their workers are commuting to Northwest Arkansas for jobs. So in the future, census definitions and census population estimates, for example, McDonald County in Missouri will not be part of Northwest Arkansas. Now, the case that you mentioned, Greene County in Northeast Arkansas, currently Jonesboro MSA has Craighead County and Poinsett County. Poinsett and Greene County have roughly the same number of people commuting to Craighead County for jobs, except Greene County is double the size of Poinsett County. So a greater proportion of people from Poinsett County are coming to Craighead County for jobs. As a result, they're in the Jonesboro MSA. So it stands to reason over time, as Greene County grows, as more people from Greene County work in Craighead County, that eventually Greene County will get added to the Jonesboro MSA. But it hasn't met that 25% threshold yet.
I'll be tweeting the President momentarily. Well, he's Mervin Jebaraj, Director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. Thank you for your insight, as always.
Thank you.